this is the fun part of the season when we really get to learn and start planning for next year, and that's really what the yield analysis tools are going to help us do. So I'm going to get started here in just a second. Before I do, just wanted to mention that I have gone ahead and muted all the phone lines just to keep the background noise down. But as always, the most important thing that I can do on these calls is to answer your questions. So if you have questions about anything FieldView related, it doesn't have to even have to do with yield analysis, but really any climate FieldView questions, please do go ahead and type those in using either the chat or the question and answer functionality on the right-hand side of the screen, and I'll make sure that I get to those either as we go or at the end of the call today. Okay, that said, let's go ahead and jump in, and I've got just a couple of slides, and then we're going to spend the vast majority of the time actually in our online mobile apps here. So first thing, yield analysis, what is it and what's it for? Well, what we want to do is we want to be able to quickly answer questions about what worked in our operation this season. Just general things like, hey, how many bushels did I harvest across my whole operation? More complex things like what hybrid or variety was my highest and lowest yielding this year, so we can start making decisions about early seed purchase for next season. And then all the different trials that we may have run in the field. I think in general, farmers don't run enough trials in the field to help figure out what products are working effectively for them. And generally that's because they don't have the tools or the capacity to analyze the results of those trials at the end of the season. There's a saying that says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result. And that applies to almost everything in life, and farming is no different. If we go ahead and we use the same practices year after year after year in our fields, well, then we can't expect that we're going to see vastly improved results from year to year. The only way to get better is to try some new things, figure out if they work, move forward with the practices that are showing promise and showing that they do increase profitability, and start leaving behind some of the practices that aren't leading to as high of profitability. So the ability to design, run, and analyze in-field experiments is one of the most important factors that the Climate FieldView platform provides. And I'm going to show you a bunch of examples of this today that you may not have the ability to analyze things that you did last year if you didn't run these kind of experiments. But I think this winter period that's coming up is super, super important because this is the time when you have the opportunity to start designing experiments for next year. What are the things that I want to learn? What are the things that I think I need to get a better handle on how they affect yield in my operation? And how can I design some experiments knowing that I have these tools at my disposal so that when I harvest in 19, I'm going to be able to get some results that are going to be able to really push me in the right direction in terms of increasing production and profitability on my farm. So that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into the product demo. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over and show my iPad screen. So let me do this. You should be able to see my iPad here in just a second. And it is up on the screen, so hopefully you can see it. If you're having problems, please chat and let me know. But you should be able to see my iPad screen. And where I am right now is I am in what we call the Black app, the Climate FieldView Black app. Now let me just go back a step to show you what it is, because I know there's some of you on the call that probably you may never have used this app before, and it's important to know it exists because it does have a bunch of yield analysis functionality that is not in the CAB app, which is the one that we collect our field data with. So if I go back to my home screen, what I'm looking at here is at the bottom of the screen, there's something called Climate with a black background and an orange F. That's the app that I'm in right now. And if you have ever used the CAB app, that same login, same username and password is what gets you into the Climate FieldView Black app. These are companion apps, one for collecting data in the field and one for post-harvest, or along the way data analysis and visualization. There's a couple of cool things about the Black app to know. One, the Black app is available to be used on your phone. The CAB app, as we know, is only an iPad app. So if you want to be able to visualize maps, if you want everyone in your operation to have access to, hey, What did the planting map on that field look like? What did the last time it got sprayed? Those kind of things. The Black app is great for that because it works on any Android phone, any iPhone, and so it's a little bit more mobile than the Cab app, which is iPad only. So go ahead and just search for Climate Field View in the Google Play Store or the App Store on Apple, and you can find this Black app, install it. Your login credentials are the same as the Cab app, and that will give you even greater access to all your maps and all your data on the go. Also, this Black app, as you're going to see in a minute, has a bit more on the yield analysis side of things. So I'm going to launch the Cab app, or the Black app, and this is what it looks like. Now, I am looking at it right now on a iPad, so it's kind of spread out horizontally here. If I was looking at on a phone, these same 6 tabs would be available. It's just that they'll be spread vertically. So it's just a different layout on the phone, but all the same content is going to be there. Now, we're talking about yield analysis here today, so let's start there. As you can see, there is a tab that is called Yield Analysis. And so I'm going to launch the Yield Analysis tab, and I'm going to start going through what we see here. Now, the first thing when I look at yield analysis, I've got a couple of choices in the upper right-hand corner of the page, and what you have there is going to depend on whether you are a farmer or a dealer. I'm set up as a dealer account essentially here, and I've had numerous farmers that have shared their data with me. So I have a link in the upper right-hand corner that says Jeff Hamlin's operation. That tells me whose operation I'm looking at now because I have multiple operations that have shared their data with me that I can look at. If I click on that Jeff Hamlin's operation, it'll show me all the different farmers who have shared data with me, and I can toggle back and forth, or I can go ahead and say, let's look at all operations together if I want to see one big picture thing for all of the acres that have been shared with me in a particular region. In this case, I'm going to choose the Smith Farms LLC down here for the sake of an example to start with. And then the next thing I have to choose is what year and crop I want to see. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner, it says 2018 corn. I'm going to go ahead and switch that over to 2015 corn because I've got a big data set there that will demonstrate some of these examples a little more clearly. Okay, so now that I'm looking at the right operation and the right year and crop, let's talk about what we see on this yield analysis page. So the key thing as we go through this is all this data just shows up automatically in the Black app as the data comes out of the field via the combine. You do not ever need to take a thumb drive and move data or do anything like that. If you are using Climate FieldView Drive in the field or a 2020 in the field, as soon as that 2020 or FieldView Drive gets a data connection, whether it's a cellular connection or a Wi-Fi connection, it's going to take all the data that's collected and it's going to push it over into the Black app so that as soon as that data hits, anyone in the operation who has this app installed on their iPhone, on their Android phone, on their iPad, they will be able to see this data in essentially real time as it comes out of the field. So while this first screen isn't super novel and exciting, because all that we're seeing here on this first screen is what was the yield that each field made. I can see at the top a summary of, hey, it was 3,200 acres of corn that was harvested, 46 million pounds of wet weight, average yield, or total yield was 779 bushels, and average yield of 240. And then below that, I have each individual field number that, hey, Macy's Creek made 283, Elkhorn Bottom made 263, and on down the line from my highest to my lowest performers. I've also got an orange line here that says what my farm average is. The average was 240, and I can quickly see if any field beat or fell short of the average. So while this isn't super rocket science stuff, this is the kind of thing that we end up seeing usually most years on the farm. What did each field make? The really cool thing about this is how it gets here, that it happens automatically as I harvest, and it automatically pushes this data as it is gathered out to all those phones, all the iPads that I have chosen as the farmer to share my data with. So no longer do I need to be calling in to, Jim, who's running the combine, and say, hey, what did that field yield? How's it coming out? What kind of moisture is it coming out at? What do the numbers look like? I can just sit wherever I am, whether I'm in line at the grain elevator, whether I'm back at the house, whether I'm, at my son's basketball game, and I can see the numbers appear in real time on my phone as they happen. So this is sort of step one to yield analysis. just getting all that data in one place without having to be the IT, tech guy that goes out and grabs all the thumb drives, brings them back to the house, plugs them into the computer, because we know we don't have time to make that happen. So this starts our process of getting all our data in one place and making data analysis essentially automatic. Now, what if I want to know more? Let's say that I have my seed salesman's coming by to see me here today, and I'm 90% through harvest, but he's going to want to start talking about early seed purchase discounts and what varieties we want to go with next year, and he's going to have some ideas. But obviously the best thing that I can use to inform my seed purchase decision for next year is how these hybrids performed on my farm. So what I want to get to is I want to get to a result that shows me, hey, what was the aggregate performance of each hybrid on my farm? Well, we make this, again, super easy for you. All you have to do is get in the combine and harvest, and as you harvest, we're automatically going to put each bit of yield data into the proper bucket so that the minute you are done with harvest or anywhere in between, you're going to have a running total of what the average performance is of every hybrid that you planted on farm this year. And how do I get to it? Well, it's that button at the top of the page that says hybrids. So if I click on hybrids here, it's going to take me to a list that shows all the different hybrids that I've planted on my farm and what their aggregate performance is from best to worst. And so I can see here that, my best performing hybrid was DeKalb 5284. It made 257 bushels on average across the 121 acres in which it was planted. Then 6487, then Stone 6368, then DeKalb 6067. I can see top to bottom. Now, that's one way of looking at my data. I might want to look at this in terms of harvested acres. Let's look at my most popular hybrids I had on the farm, the ones that I used the most of last year, and see which of those are the ones that performed best and worst. And if I want to do that, I can always click on the header column, the column header of any column here. And so if I click on harvested acres, it's going to sort my hybrids from the most popular to the least popular, or from the least popular to the most popular. Let's leave it in this view here where we can see our most popular hybrids down to our least popular hybrids and see how they did. So now here in this view, I can see that, hey, my number one hybrid on farm was DeKalb 6277, and it made 247 bushels. My farm average was 240 bushels, that orange line there. So this was my most popular hybrid. It did beat my farm average. So I can see that this one did pretty well, and I'm probably going to want to buy more of this next year. Now, my second most popular hybrid was DeKalb 6208, and it made 232 bushels on average. It missed the farm average by 8 bushels an acre, and I had it planted on 422 acres, so a good chunk of my operation. Now, this is one that I'm going to want to look at in a little more detail because when my seed guy comes, should I be replacing this? Should there be another set of genetics that I want to put out there? Well, the average number wasn't as good as I would have liked it to be here in this year when I had pretty good production across my entire operation here. Now, how do I look at this in more detail? How do I figure it out? Do I want to throw this hybrid out? We don't want to throw it out based on the average numbers here because there's obviously more to this story. What environments did we put it in? What fields were those that it was placed? And look at that in a little more detail. And we can always do that by clicking any of these rows in here to see how that hybrid performed in a bit more detail. So I'm going to click on 6208. And when I do, it's going to take me to a report that just shows me details for 6208. So at the top of the screen, you can see that it says yield analysis DeKalb 6208 by field. It'll show me the total stats here that, hey, it was 422 acres, average yield of 232 bushels, and then it gives me the field by field breakdown. These are the 7 fields where this hybrid was placed, and this is how it performed. And what I quickly see here is that this is not a bad set of genetics. The genetics in 6208 perform well when I put them in the right environment. I made 255 on Home Place. I made 251 on Fred South Small, and I made 249 on Dave's. Those 3 are all really good numbers. So what I can see here is that I don't want to throw these genetics out. They do perform when I'm putting them in the right place. But what I might want to do is have a conversation with my agronomist, with my seed salesman about the particulars of Clem South Gunderson and Green Valley, those 2 fields that yielded the worst. Because I didn't get as high a number there, and now I need to use my local knowledge of my fields. I need to use my agronomist and his knowledge of my fields. And we need to say, well, what do we know about those locations? What do we know about the soil types in those fields? What's our opportunity there? Is 224 a good number for Clem South Gunderson? Maybe that's a tough piece of dirt, tougher than the rest of my operation, and 224 is actually a good number. And so I need to put that in context, but I've got the information here right in front of me to help me do that. Additionally, maybe, Green Valley, that 205, maybe I know that crop had, or that field had a hail event that went across the northern edge of it. And so the 205 is an artificially low number influenced by an outside event like a hailstorm. So the whole idea is what we're going to do is we're going to put all this data in front of you automatically, where all you have to do is get in the combine and harvest. And these reports are going to be sitting here waiting for you the minute you pull out of the field. Then you, instead of having to be the person going around and pulling thumb drives and sitting in front of a computer for 12 hours trying to make the data talk, that part's done for you. You just have to pull up the reports, look at them, and make some decisions based on that. And hopefully we're going to be able to help you make those decisions more quickly and with a little bit more certainty than you've been able to do in the past. Because the data is just going to be sitting here waiting for you automatically. And not only on the iPad that collected it, but also in every iPhone and Android phone around the farm as well that you have chosen to share it with. Now, one other thing I'll say here, when you get to a report like this that says, hey, this is the performance of 62.8, maybe you want to share this with someone. Maybe you want to share it with your seed salesman or your agronomist, and you want to say, hey, let's take a look at this, let's do this. A lot of times you want to have a paper copy of that because maybe the person you're talking to doesn't have access to your Climate FieldView account. Anything that you want to get on paper out of our system, you can do that using the little box with the arrow in the upper right-hand corner. So if you get to a screen that has facts on it that you want to share, click that little box with the arrow in the upper right-hand corner. It's going to generate a one-page little PDF document that's formatted nicely that says, hey, this is your yield report by field for DeKalb 62.8. And it's just got all the information we just had there on the screen in a nicely formatted document. I click that little box with the arrow in the upper right-hand corner again, and it's going to ask me, how do you want to share this? Do you want to send it to your printer? Do you want to send it via Gmail, via whatever mail you have on there? Do you want to text message it to someone? Any of the communication things that you have available on your iPad, it will allow you to send it via those to wherever you want to go. So just something to know, you can generate those reports there by always using that box in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, let me show you one other sort of cool kind of operation-wide yield analysis report that's kind of a good one to know about, and that's the soils report. So if you are farming in the United States, you're going to have this soils report up there. If you're not in the United States, this is a U.S.-only feature at the moment because we have a countrywide U.S. soils database that applies to every farmer here in the U.S. where we can segregate yield data by soil type. If you're in Canada or somewhere else, this tab's not going to be here. But if I go ahead and click on soils, I can go ahead and see across my operation how many acres of every soil type exist. And what you can see here is that in this operation, my farm is largely dominated by Osco-silt loams. I've got 1,400 acres of Osco-silt loams. Then I've got 257 acres of Lawson-silt loams. And I can see what my average yield is across each of those soil types. Now, let's say I picked up a new piece of land. I'm renting a new piece of land here for this coming 2019 season. I've never farmed it before, but I do know that Lawson-silt loam is the predominant soil type in that field. Well, as I'm starting to decide what hybrid I want to put in there, again, let's use my data from my farm, stuff that has proven itself to me on Lawson-silt loams. Let's put the right hybrid in there that's going to give us the best shot for making a good yield there, even though I don't know a whole lot about this field because I haven't farmed it before. So how do I do that? Well, if I tap on Lawson-silt loams, it's going to show me all the different fields I have that have Lawson-silt loam soil types. But what I really want to do here is I want to click on hybrids at the top of the screen and say, based on my data, what have been the highest performing hybrids in Lawson-silt loam soil types? And now I get a list here that says, hey, 6277 had made 264 across the 109 acres of Lawson-silt loam soil types in my operation last year. 6333 made 263. And I can look at this table and basically say, hey, using my data from last year, my experience shows me that, hey, either 6277, 6333, 6487, those are all some top performers in that soil type. They've proven that they can do it on my farm. And so if I was going to make a choice for what I wanted to plant next year, those would probably be some of my first go-tos because they've proven themselves, my farm, my data, and I know that those genetics work well with that soil type. So a couple of cool ways that you can just use this average summary data that's just going to show up automatically in your system as you harvest. So any questions about that, please feel free to chat those in using either the chat or the question and answer functionality here in the WebEx, and we'll make sure we get to those. But now that we're done with that, what I wanted to show you was some of the subfield yield analysis tools that exist. And actually, before I do that, let me show you one other thing here. So if I go into this yield analysis, so what I wanted to show you here is a lot of times we're running non-calibrated combines in the field. And so hopefully in those situations, we have our scale tickets or something that tells us what the total wet weight was that came out of the field, or some of these variables available to us that'll help us do some post-harvest calibration, because before we go too far in this yield analysis, we want to make sure that the yield of data is actually good, because all we do with our system, with the FieldView Plus system, using a drive in the cab or a 2020 in the cab to gather the data, all we do is listen to the machine data. If the Deere combine or the Case combine or the Massey Ferguson combine, if the combine that's running in the field is not calibrated, well, that same uncalibrated data is what is going to flow through to our Climate FieldView system. But we do have a very easy way to do post-harvest calibration. So the way we do this is on this first yield analysis page. So I go to any year like this one. I've got 2018 data. I've got Benson's farm. It's the only farm that I've harvested so far. Shows that it made 106 bushels. Okay. If this was a non-calibrated combine, I can basically use this edit crop settings in the upper left-hand corner. See that button there? This is edit crop settings. If I click that one, it's going to allow me to see what my total nominal, my dry weight, my yield, and my average yield was. And I should be able to, wait, these are the, hold on a minute. This is not the right one that I was looking for. Where's the one that I wanted here? Here it is. Once I click into the field, this one has an adjust field yield button in the upper left-hand corner. So when I'm on an individual field, I can click into that field here. I can click adjust field yield. And this one's going to allow me to edit either my harvested area, my wet weight, or my moisture based on some of the numbers I got from my scale tickets. So if my scale tickets for this field actually said, hey, the total pounds that came out of the field were 250,000, even though the machine reported 235,988, I can just click on that, say 250, oh, let me just do it right here, 250, 123, and save, and it's going to update that. It'll update my map, it'll update my average yield for the field. You see that it went up a little bit here by making that change, and it will always save my original machine settings as well. So even though I edited it to 250,000 here, over on the left-hand side there where it says wet weight, you can see that the original that came off of the machine was 235,988. So we're never going to lose that data in case we need to go back to it. But this allows us to do post-harvest calibration and really true up our yield data so that we're sure that all the data flowing through into our yield analysis reports is good, even in situations where maybe our combines weren't as calibrated as we would have liked them to be. So I hit apply, it reruns this, and my yield moves from 106 bushels an acre to 112 bushels an acre because I just told it that more weight came off the field than the combine had calculated. So it adjusts my yield, it adjusts my map, and everything going forward. So that is going to be another step you'll want to take post-harvest, where go ahead and true up your yields using that adjust field yield button. And there's a way you can do that in the cab app as well, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Okay, so let's now go into some individual field yield stuff like what we're looking at here. But let me go back. Let me choose a different farm here that's got some different data in it. And here we go. And let's look at, for example, let's start with this one, 2016 corn. And I'm going to go over to a field called Jefferson Center. So I've got 6 fields here with some 2016 yield data. If I want to look at any one field in particular, I can click on it here in this list. So I'm going to click on Jefferson Center. It'll take me over to that report for that field. And what you can see here is that I had essentially 2 different varieties or 2 different things that I planted in this field. I planted this specialty 42V843 hybrid, and I had half of the field treated with quick roots and half the field not treated with quick roots. And the quick roots treated seed made 1 bushel better than the non-quick roots treated seed. So I had a 1 bushel advantage using quick roots. Well, that's interesting. At this point, if I stopped my yield analysis here, I'd say, you know what, I don't think that quick roots product is paying for itself. 1 bushel advantage, that sounds like noise. I'm not really sure that works. I don't think it's worth spending the money on that particular seed treatment because the data here is showing me that it didn't really give me much of an advantage. But there's a lot of variability that goes on in fields, and sometimes the whole field picture here doesn't tell the whole story, and you need to dive a little bit deeper and look at some subfield yield analysis to really understand the details of a particular treatment or a particular test that you've done in the field. So how do we do that? Well, now that I'm on this page, there's this view yield map option in the upper right hand corner, and if I click that view yield map, it's going to take me over to my yield map for the field, and I can go ahead and split the screen using the book icon in the upper right hand corner. So I can see 2 variables at once. And I could pull up, for example, my planting map here on this field. And you can see my hybrid map there that shows, yeah, we split the planter here. And it's pretty hard to tell by just looking at the yield map, hey, did the quick roots work or not? But we got that automatic summary as soon as we pulled out of the field that told us, yes, quick roots did beat non-quick roots by a bushel an acre. But there's a lot of variability in this field. This is a field with, like, if I look at some of my details here, I can look at, for example, my base layers, my soil data on this field. And if I look at my soil data on this field, this is my pH map. You can see that it varies fairly widely. This is my organic matter map for this field. And again, varies from almost 0% up to something in the 6 to 7% range. This is my CEC map. This is my P map. So I've got a lot of variability in this field that might impact the way that quick roots is working in the field. Because when I bought the quick roots, the guy that was selling it to me told me, hey, this is a product that's going to really increase nutrient availability, especially early in the season in those poorer soils. So I might expect it to perform differently from one soil type to another. So when I'm really evaluating it, maybe I can go in here and I can do this a little bit more, learn a little bit more about this field in some different ways by using the simple analysis tools that we've built in. And one of those is something called Field Region Report, where I can use my finger to just draw a circle on the field, and it will tell me everything it knows about that part of the field. So how does that work? Well, let's look at this organic matter map here, and I'm going to take and draw a circle just around some of my higher organic matter in the field. Those green areas are areas that are at least 3.5 to 4% organic matter. And if I take my finger and I say, tell me about yield just in this part of the field where I've got higher organic matter. This is an Indiana field, some pretty low organic matter spots. And when I draw that circle, it says, okay, I'm going to tell you everything I know about this. So I know you had 2 different varieties in the field. You had the treated seed and the non-treated seed. And so it first breaks that out. And it says your treated seed made 138 bushels. Your non-treated seed made 138 bushels. And then it breaks the data down by soil type, by population, by elevation, by planter date. Basically, what we're trying to do is tease out and help float to the top. What are the things that really matter that are impacting yield in this part of the field? We're trying to make this easy so you can quickly see, that is the distinguishing characteristic or thing that mattered here. Now, in this case, what we're seeing is that in this higher organic matter, I don't see a difference. My seed treatment didn't help me at all. In fact, I have an equal yield, both treated and untreated. Okay. So what about if I choose an area of the field that's got lower organic matter? So like that northern section of the field is all less than 1%, approaching 0 organic matter. I mean, we never truly have 0, but it's pretty low. If I take that same symbol, that same option, and start drawing a circle around that part of the field and say, tell me about yield up there, it's going to run in a yield analysis there. And now, again, it's going to break it down by everything it knows about. And now floating to the top here is it's showing me that my quick roots treated seed made 146 bushels, while my non-treated seed made 142 bushels. So now, I mean, this is just one test in one part of a field, but here it's telling me I do see an advantage to using the seed treatment when I'm in poor soils that have low organic matter. I see a 4 bushel yield gain. I'd want to draw more circles in more parts of the field. I want to continue to test this and see if it continues to show through. But what I might find out is that using my data from my farm, I can see a significant yield gain in my poor organic matter soils. And so going forward, what I might decide to do is, I'm not going to spend the money to treat all my corn seed. In those fields where I've got higher organic matter in general, the average organic matter is higher, maybe I'm not going to spend that money. But in those fields where I've got poor soils, poor organic matter, maybe I do want to spend the money because I'm starting to see that there might be a yield benefit that offsets the cost of the product. And this, again, is really what our yield analysis tools are about. It's helping to find out what's working and what's not on the farm, helping to deliver the results of some of these experiments so that we can see very clearly and numerically what the results are and what's working and what's not. Let me show you one other example here that I think is another cool one. This is a wheat field in Kansas, if I can find it. I think it's 2017 wheat, I think is where it is. So if I go to 2017 wheat, I've got this field here. And let's go ahead and view the yield map for this field. And this is the yield map that I got for this field, or this farmer got for this field when he harvested it. I'm going to split the screen here. And what you quickly see here is, hey, we had, fairly consistent yields across this field, except in that kind of southeastern section of the field where the yields were a whole lot higher. Now, as the farmer, if I look at this, I say, well, what happened in that southeast corner of the field? And if it's something I can replicate, well, hey, that's something that I might be able to really increase my profitability as a farmer. Let's do more of that and go forward and hopefully have a better year in 2019. So because I've used the system and I've got all my as planted maps, my fertility maps, everything is here all in one place, I can start looking through those maps. And I can say, from a planting perspective, what varieties did I put in this field? And I did put 2 different varieties, but it was really just one in the headlands and one in the rest of the field. So that's not telling the story of that yield picture that I have. What about a planting date? Maybe I replanted something, and again, that's not the case here. I had the headlands planted on September 26th, and I planted the rest of the field on September 27th. Okay, what about population? Is that the story? And I can go through these maps to try and find the one that matters. And in this case, what it is I had tested an application. Basically, my chemical salesman had said, hey, this is a good product. It's a growth regulator. I think it's going to really help your yields. I, of course, didn't trust him and say that, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put that on all 5,000 acres of wheat that I farm automatically. No, I'm going to try it in a little part of my field. I'm going to see how it works out, and then I'll make decisions going from there based on my personal results with the product. And as we can see here, where I sprayed that product, where I put the couple of test passes, my yields were definitely higher. Now, I've got a couple of questions still. One of them is, this product isn't free. It may cost me $30 an acre to put this product down. So I've got to make sure that the yield bump I get is enough to offset the cost of the product. So how do we check that? Well, we can, again, just use our finger to draw some of these circles on the map. And so I can come in here and say, tell me about yield just here where I sprayed. Draw a circle around it. It's going to very quickly turn a result back that says, hey, you made 116 bushel wheat here in this part of the field. Okay, what did I make where I didn't spray? Well, let's just draw a circle somewhere else in the field. Here where I didn't spray, it's 84 bushel wheat. So now what I've got is my farm, my data, showing me that I have a 32 bushel yield advantage to using this growth regulator. And lo and behold, that chemical guy, my chem salesman, he was right. This product definitely paid for itself. Even if this thing costs $30 an acre, I got a 32 bushel yield advantage by using it. So now, going forward, I can make an investment in this product, certainly over quite a few more acres, and confirm that it really does still work. But man, last year it paid for itself. So I might want to do more of that. And I think the really cool thing about this is not just the ease of figuring out, how much more yield I got from one part of the field than another by simply drawing some circles, and the fact that it's just waiting there for me when I'm done. But let's think about what it would take to do this kind of experiment in a traditional farming system. If I was going to do this kind of experiment where I had said, I'm going to test this particular product in a part of the field with a couple of passes of the sprayer, what would I do? Well, I would get in the sprayer, I would go out there and I would make those couple, 3, 4 passes. Then I would get out of the sprayer and I'd put some flags down at the edge of the field to mark off where that trial was so that I could remember it, and I could come harvest, I could get back to that section. Then I would probably end up having those flags run over later in the season, because that's just what happens. I mean, we're in the field, we're doing all kinds of passes, and odds are at least 50-50 that someone's going to run over those flags and I'm going to lose track of where they are. And so then come harvest, what's going to happen is I'm going to get in the combine and I'm going to be harvesting this field, and I'm going to say, oh, wait, this is the field where we ran that trial of the growth regulator. And what I really should do is I should get the weigh wagon out here, and I should slow harvest down, and I should harvest a strip in the trial, and I should harvest a strip that's not in the trial, and I should weigh them, and I should get some numbers around whether or not this worked. But I ran over the flag, so I'm not really even sure where the trial is, and I'm busy. I really got to go. And so I'm just going to put the hammer down, and I'm going to run through this field with the combine, and we're going to get it out. And what I'm going to probably do is I'm going to watch those numbers on the combine monitor as I go through the field. And I'm going to try and guesstimate where the trial was based on my recollection since I ran over the flags. And I'm going to just try and get a gut feel, like, do I feel like the yield numbers are higher in that part of the field than they are in the rest of the field? And way too much of the experimentation that we do on farm goes like that, because we don't have the time and the resources and the technical tools to help make yield analysis easy. And we have changed all of that. When you're using our system, you know that just by doing what you're already going to do, go through the field with a planter, go through the field with a tillage bar, go through the field with a Y drop, go through the field with your sprayer, your combine, your maps are going to automatically show up all stacked up in your Climate FieldView app, so that at the end, when you get harvest done, all you have to do is come back and draw some circles. So what this should do is it should encourage more experimentation in the field for you, because you know you're never going to lose the results of an experiment again. So when you are going through with the sprayer, do a half rate, a couple of passes at a half rate, and then do a full rate, or leave a check strip. When you're going through with fertility, do a 2 times rate, do a half rate, do these kind of things that you wouldn't do otherwise because you didn't think you had the tools to get the results out. And now, end of the season, you're going to be able to start learning a whole lot more about your farm and learning it a lot faster, so that in 2019, you run a bunch of experiments. 2020, you implement the results of those experiments, and you start to see progress on your farm in terms of increasing yields and increasing profitability, because you're getting results from experiments easier than you've ever been able to get them before. Data doesn't die in the cab. It actually comes and goes to a place that you can use it. So hopefully that's pretty clear. Let me show you. I'll show you one other example. I know I'm going to start running out of time here, but let me just show one other example while I'm here. If I go to fields, where is this one? Here's this Y drop test example where I've got a field. Here's my yield for the field. If I pick up my in-season applications, basically I did some Y drops here, and I was testing some different rates of nitrogen in this field and what the optimal rate is to side dress with. And if I pick a part of the field down here where I've got some pretty consistent soil types, I can, again, just come in here with my finger and say, hey, what was my yield where I did more nitrogen, where I was putting it down at about 16 gallons an acre? Well, I made 228 bushels there. What about where I did it at 10 gallons an acre, and I draw a circle here? So 228 bushels where I increased it versus 219 bushels where I went with a lower rate. Again, here I can see that I had a 9 bushel increase by going to a higher nitrogen, and now I can calculate whether or not that made sense. Was that the right decision? Should I have been saving on nitrogen? Help inform decisions for next year. What are the right rates to be side dressing on? This will obviously change season to season, but you kind of want to start building that database of what works, what doesn't, and what are the right decisions on these fields. Okay, again, questions about any of that, please go ahead and type them in, and we'll make sure we get to those here as we go. Let me show you a couple other things. So I'm going to go into the CAB app. So most of this we were doing so far was in the black app. Let's go ahead and look at the CAB app. There's a couple of things worth seeing there as well. So in the CAB app, if I go to my maps and I go to my a yield map for a particular field, so let's find a field here that I've got yield data on. I think this one has some yield data. So here's a yield map for a particular field in the CAB app. If you want to do the post-harvest yield adjustment in the CAB app, I showed you how to do it in the black app. Post-harvest yield adjustment in the CAB app is in this little button that's next to the house, the one with the arrow. And there's something called a harvest summary there. And if I click on harvest summary, I have the option to tap this section and edit those values there. One of the things to know is that when you're doing post-harvest yield adjustment in the CAB app, you have the additional option of adjusting it by dry bushels. as of today, we don't have the option to change dry bushels in the black app. That if that's the way that you want to edit do your post-harvest yield adjustment, that would only be available in the cab app. So just something to note there. One of the other things that's kind of cool about the cab app is it generates some pretty nice individual field level reports. And they even include things like which combine was in the field, what was the operator, what was that operator's number, and then you can go ahead and you can type in notes on harvest. And once you've got this page looking the way that you want it, you can say create map PDF, and it's going to generate this nice little one-pager or couple-pager that says, hey, this is the Elkhorn Creek's harvest summary report. Corn was harvested October 16th to October 17th. Here's the map of the yields. Here's all my summary numbers for the field. Here's the breakdown of yield by hybrid. Here's the combine operator. And if you had multiple combines in the field, it would show me the total weight taken out by each combine. There's my notes that I went ahead and typed into the report. And so I've got this nice little summary. If I want it in hard copy, I can click the email print button in the upper right-hand corner and print or send it to whoever I want. So there is some different reporting available in the cab app that may be helpful to you depending on how you want to look at your data and how you might want to especially share it in hard copy. Let me think what else we had to show here on this one. Oh, a really cool tool that we have in this particular application. Let me see if I can find that field here. Okay, well, I can do it with this field. One of the cool tools we have here is, you saw how in the last black app I was drawing circles with my finger saying, tell me about yield in this part of the field, tell me about yield in that part of the field. Actually, I do want to switch fields. Let me do this. So let's go over to that field that we were talking about before, that Liveland field where we had done the test of the growth regulator. So if I go to that 2017 wheat data, and I go to my in-season applications, and I look at my application map, if I want to build a more precise analysis region, so maybe I don't want to take with my finger and draw a circle, I want to actually get the exact area that I made these spray passes and analyze yield there, we built in a really cool tool here where I can click this little arrow next to the house, and I can say create field region, and there's some options. There's that freehand, draw with a circle like I did in the black app. There's create polygon. That exists in both of them, where I can come and it says draw at least 3 points. So I can say, hey, let's analyze yield here, and I just make a square or something, and then I can move that square around and try and get it to line up exactly with where my passes were, whatever I need to do there. So that's an option. And one of the other cool things about this polygon tool, let me just go back to it again, or the freehand tool in the black app, is if you want to know how long something is, if I start drawing, it's going to, as you can see here, it's going to tell me how long that line is. This is pretty good for measuring different things, and as I go around, it's going to tell me the total perimeter of that space. So it will actually give you some distance measurements as you go, and it'll tell you the total number of acres when you're done. So that can be helpful in identifying how big in terms of acres and area on the field is. Okay, so I don't want to do that. But the one I wanted to show you was our other option, which exists only in the black app, which is select passes. If I tap on select passes, it's going to say, which passes do you want to include in this region? And very simply, I can just say, hey, that pass, that pass, that pass, and that pass. And that will very easily create a region that matches exactly to where I did this spray application. And if I want to like cut off the first part of it because, hey, the sprayer was just warming up there and we didn't really get the full pass there, I can shorten any one of them by grabbing those arrows at the end. I can make these, you know, whatever I need them to be. But this is a really cool tool where even ahead of harvest, you can go ahead and define those regions because mid-season, you did some spray application. You just did a couple of strips of it. You can select the region, define it, say done. I want to save this field region. And then it will, even though I created it here in the cab app, it will also be available for use in the black app as well. Anything that's created in the cab app or the black app shows up in the other one. So you can go ahead and have those available. And then I can say create a PDF, and it'll say, hey, here's a field region summary. These are the areas that I wanted to analyze, and this is my total data here associated with that. So just some cool tools to make sure that you are aware of. Okay, I think that's most of what I wanted to cover as far as yield analysis today. There's a couple last slides that I'll just give you a couple more ideas on. I'm going to stop sharing my iPad. But again, any questions anyone has, please let me know. But let me see if I can get this slide to advance here. There we go. So a couple ideas here just to start you thinking about what you might want to do next year now that you have this really cool tool in your hand that's going to help you understand yield analysis in some ways that you just haven't probably been able to do it before unless you're a really good software person. So one of the examples here, this is from a wheat field in Kansas where the operator was, as you can see in this picture, every pass he was varying his population. He was going from 40 pounds an acre up to 45, up to 50 pounds an acre, up to 55 as he planted wheat. And this is the kind of thing you would never do if you didn't have some pretty robust analysis tools. But because he's using the FieldView platform, he was confident that he could do this. And all he had to do at harvest time then was take his finger and draw a circle around some part of this field, and he was going to get a yield by population response curve. So, you know, the seed salesman for this Westbred variety, I don't know which one it is, it's Westbred 4269, probably told him, hey, the ideal population to plant this at is, 60 pounds an acre. But he wanted to see for himself on his fields where that, optimal population line was, where the yield increases that he got started to tail off to a point where they weren't profitable anymore. And so he went through and made these passes through the field, and come harvest, all he does is draw a circle around it, and he gets this table that tells him immediately where that optimal population line is and where the population response curve starts dropping off. This is another one run by one of our agronomists in Indiana, where he said he's tracking his disc gripper passes with FieldView tonight. I think I'll skip a few passes and see if it affects next fall's yield map. Because every pass across the field matters. Every pass is having an impact on our yield. And so even things like ripping, let's leave a couple of strips open because we know at the end of the season when we harvest, I can just take that yield map and draw some circles on it and see what my yield is with and without ripping and start to, again, make better decisions for the next season. Let's do the practices that are most proving themselves to be most profitable on our farm. Here's another one where the question is, what's the best population for soybeans in Jefferson County? I guess we're going to find out with this variety by soil type by population trial. He had the field with 3 different soil types across it going east to west, and he put in a bunch of different varieties running east to west at a bunch of different populations so that he can very quickly draw a circle at the end of the season and identify for each of these soil types what that ideal population and variety is for them. Another one where someone's running an experiment on what's the best population for a soybean field. He put in 3 blocks of populations, and he doesn't have to get the wagon out at the end of the season. He just harvests this field, and automatically the results are going to be waiting for him. Draw a circle. It'll tell him which population was the winner. So he can use that data going forward on his farm. So that's about it. So questions, we have a fantastic support team at our Kansas City office, or our St. Louis office, sorry. You will get a live person on the phone who speaks English, who is from a farming background, and they will help you. Please do call that support line at any time that you have questions when you're in the field or this winter and you can't figure something out, or you can email them at support@climate.com. If this webinar was good for you, if you learned something, if you want to do more of these, I have not yet published my November webinar schedule, but I'm hoping to do that here very soon, probably even today or tomorrow. But you can always go to climate.com/webinars and see the most recent month of webinar topics and dates. So if there are things you want to learn about climate, please do join those. I'm happy to have as many people as I can where I can educate there. And then lastly, I've been at Climate for a really long time, so I've got this simple email address of jeff@climate.com because when I started, I was the only Jeff, and we never figured we'd have more than one Jeff. Lo and behold, here now we're a 60,000 person company. But I'm the only Jeff that has jeff@climate.com. If you want to reach me, please do send me an email. I travel quite a bit, so I'm not as accessible as the support team, but I do like to help, and I can certainly try and point you in the right direction if there's something that you need help with.